As part of Ferrari Fridays, William Ross from the Exotic Car Marketplace will be discussing all things Ferrari and interviewing people that live and breathe the Ferrari brand. Topics range from road cars to racing, drivers to owners, as well as auctions, private sales, and trends in the collector market.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ferrari Marketplace, presented to you by the Motoring Podcast Network, MPN. Check us out, motoringpodcast.net. I'm your host, William Ross, and for Ferrari Friday this week, we're not actually going to talk about cars, per se. We are going to talk about the blockbuster news of Lewis Hamilton coming to Ferrari, going to Ferrari in 2025 in Formula One. So I'm sure a lot of you guys out there that listen to the channel or are fans of Ferrari, also are fans of Formula One. Now, granted, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I know people like lately have kind of been, losing interest. Everybody goes, oh, Max Verstappen is just, it's all it is Max Verstappen. Well, obviously these people must be new to watching F1 because this is how the cycle works in F1. You have your dominant teams, you have your dominant guy. You know what? It's the best car wins. That's the big thing about Formula One. It's about the best car. Yeah, the best driver helps as well, but the best car is going to win over everything else. And the past few years, obviously, the Adrian Newey designed Red Bull has been the dominant car. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from Max Verstappen, but prior to that, it was Lewis Hamilton that won 6 in a row. 7 in a row, 6 or 7 in a row, whatever the heck it was. With Nico Rosberg, kind of dropped himself in there the one year, is it 2016 that he won, and then just abruptly retired because he had enough of all the mental games and whatnot, and he made his, multi-million dollars and stuff like that, so he didn't need to really drive anymore, so he got done, which was kind of an interesting move, and good for him, go out on top. But obviously then prior to Lewis Hamilton, we had a spattering here and there, but then you had Michael Schumacher was dominant. So he had 5 consecutive years. Was it 2000 or 2001 to 2005, I believe it was, that he won the championship, and Ferrari won the Constructor Championship. So, Michael came on to Ferrari. It took him a few years to get things right, but, they also brought on Ross Brawn, Jean Todt, They had the super team, I guess you could say, there at Ferrari in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and created the dominant car. And that's what it kind of takes. And that's what Red Bull has now. But anyways, Ferrari's been kind of chipping, knocking at the door, but, they've been playing second fiddle to Red Bull. And it's also subsequently Mercedes. So like last year, Ferrari finished third behind Mercedes and then obviously Red Bull. So Ferrari's got some catching up to do. So it's going to be really interesting to see. If anyone's been watching or paying attention, Ferrari just dropped video on the new SF24. And so it looks sweet. I mean, looks like the other cars. Everyone seems to be following Red Bull's design. Obviously regulation safety plays a major, huge role in the design of these cars. And, they have to work within the regulations. But what always kind of kills me is when you look at these cars as these designers, no one really, I guess, thinks outside the box in regards to design. Now, I give kudos to Mercedes. They gave it a shot with that zero pod design, and they tried something completely different. Didn't work, so they had to revert back to like the design pretty much everyone else had. But I was cool. It was cool to see that because, hey, outside the box, let's try something different. Let's not do what everyone else is doing. I mean, think back to, who was it? Was it Benetton? Did the raised nose back there in the 90s? Everyone was like, what the heck is that? Everyone had but everyone had the nose went down to the ground. I'm sorry, like the late 80s, early 90s produced some of the most gorgeous F1 cars of all time, barring, like, say, the 1960s. But 80s, 70s and 80s, they had some great ones. But man, the late 80s, early 90s, just some gorgeous cars. I wasn't a big fan of those raised nose design that lasted for so long. They had some really wacky things. And again, it was all about the rules and regulations and how those things got designed. So, and it's about aerodynamics. And it's about downforce on that car. So obviously you got to have a slippery car. You got to try and have the least amount of drag, but you also need downforce on specific tracks. And you'll see it where a lot of the cars, they're good on one track, terrible on another. It's a obviously a home run if someone can build a car, i.e. Adrian Newey, that actually is good on all tracks. Now, not sure to say it's going to dominate every single track, but it's going to pretty much do very, very well on every track. You're going to have some, where your competitors are closer than others. But I think Ferrari had those issues last year. I know they pulled out Carlos Sainz, pulled out that one win last year for Ferrari, which was awesome. And speaking of Carlos Sainz, that is who Lewis Hamilton's seat is taking, is Mr. Carlos Sainz. Now, I'm a big Carlos Sainz fan. I like him. He goes about his business, doesn't play games, everything like that. He's got kind of a personality. But I like him, and I love his old man. His old man's phenomenal. One of the best rally drivers of all time. And if you kind of keep an eye on him, now he's dominating the car rally. He's doing some other things. But, it's going to be interesting to see where Carlos Sainz goes. Now, obviously, the scuttlebutt and rumors of that is, he's going to go over to the Audi team when they kind of show up. I believe they're supposed to be showing up next year, taking over for the Sauber team as the Audi team, or I don't know if it's going to be 2026 when the new engine regs and everything comes in. So I'm not sure, but the rumor has it that he was going over there, and also potentially, Mick Schumacher's name was mixed in there and whatnot. So I don't know. It's going to be kind of interesting to see. But he'll end up somewhere. Obviously, there's a lot of contracts that are up after 2024. Now, you had the big guys already signed. Obviously, Max Verstappen signed. You got, the Lewis is going now to Ferrari. Charles Leclerc, he's signed up. So, but you're going to have a lot of open seats like that. Obviously, like Daniel Ricciardo supposedly going back to Red Bull, whatnot. So, I don't know. We'll see. But let's get back to Lewis Hamilton and him going to Ferrari. Now, this is kind of an interesting, I guess, scenario because he'll be 40 years old. Now, obviously, this day and age, I was like, 40 is old, especially way back in the day. That was about, the guys weren't really hitting their prime and doing actually serious racing until their 30s, early 40s. So, that was nothing new back then. But, obviously, the big wave was all these young guys in their early 20s. Obviously, then you had the teens, with Max Verstappen being 17 when he made his debut, which was just like everyone's like, oh, that's the biggest mistake ever made, blah, blah, blah. But Red Bull stuck with him, and look what they got now. Now he's a multi-world champion. But, I think Fernando Alonso was kind of able to change that stigma in regards to, these guys in their 40s being able to still race. Obviously, Fernando's a very, very unique specimen, an individual in regards to his talent. Unfortunately for him, he always wrong place, wrong car, wrong time. It's sad because he should have more than 2 world championships. He should have 5 or 6. But he always made the wrong move. Now, was it just being too antsy, not waiting? Now, I will give him credit. He stuck around with McLaren for way too long. Back there, was it 2015, 16, 17, or 14, 15, whatever it was, and especially when they're going through the growing pains with Honda. But, he was kind of loyal to them, even though he had kind of a falling out back in, many years prior to that. But, kudos to him. But then obviously he took some time off, took a sabbatical, raced the Indy 500. God, I wish he would have won the Indy 500 that year. Too bad his engine blew up. That would have been so awesome. But, then came back, obviously, with Aston Martin. So now Fernando's a little bit older by a few years than Lewis, but he's proving that a gentleman driver of that age is still extremely capable of producing results. Obviously, Fernando outscored his teammate Lance Stroll, i.e. the son of the owner of the team. Now, I'll give kudos. I have nothing against Lance Stroll. I think he can drive. He did very well in some car, got up there. Yeah, hey, but who doesn't, a majority of these guys had to pay their way to get up there. Hey, and so what? Yeah, his dad owns the team, and he owns Aston Martin, basically. So, but, what? I think the kid can drive. He's had his moments. He's won a pole position, whatnot. He's not, he's had his few podium finishes. But, I just think kid gets a bad rap. There's a lot of weight on his shoulder. Everyone just kind of knocks on him because, I don't know if they're jealous because, hey, who would want to have, a dad that's a multi-billionaire, and you have access to all that stuff, and you can pretty much go race wherever you wanted. So, but anyway, so Fernando came in and kind of not say walked all over Lance, but he pretty much did. Outscored him very, very by a very wide margin. So I think that kind of opened up the eyes. Now, obviously, Lewis Hamilton has the CV in regards to being, a seven-time world champion, i.e., someone could say he should be 8 because of that fiasco a few years back in Abu Dhabi or wherever that final thing is, F1 races, and they had that last lap restart. Now, I will say I was rooting for Max. I thought I was screaming at the TV watching that finale. That was probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen in F1. Basically, one lap, last lap dash for the world championship. And, Max was on newer tires, and obviously he passed Max, and then he goes to win the world championship. But then, the race director or whatever his name was, he obviously gets canned and everything, blah, blah, because, that wasn't supposed to happen per rules, blah, blah, anything, but what's done is done. But anyways, so I think, obviously Fernando Alonso was paving the way for these older guys to stay in the sport. And again, like I said, for Lewis has got the CV. He's a 7-time world champion. And obviously he's proved it, driving the Mercedes. Now, obviously Mercedes has been very, I don't want to say not competitive. They've been competitive, but they're just, I want to say best of the rest, I guess you could say. But, they have the technical wherewithal. Obviously, as you can see, they nailed the first with the hybrid era in regards to, was it 2014 to, was it 2019, 2020, whatever it was. Then obviously, when, Max came in and then the regulations changed to the new downforce regulations where they also had the under trays and they changed up the car design. They kind of misstepped. So obviously, again, it just kind of shows you it's a hit or miss situation. But he drove those cars very well. He was, he's still very fast, still can drive a car. There's no doubt about that. He's, very physically fit person. He's a vegan. So it's not like he's, these guys at day and age, all these drivers, have their nutritionists and whatnot. They're not out partying, anything like that. Back in the day, James Hunt's my hero. The way he just, sex the breakfast of champions. That's probably one of the greatest, patches you can get on your race suit of all time. But, so anyways, it's showing that these guys can get, still hang with the youngsters and still drive. And again, obviously you got to have the car, but, and obviously you got to be physically fit to be able to train and do that stuff. But it's going to be interesting to see, one, this year, because Toto, knowing that Lewis is leaving, so are they just going to put everything behind George Russell? Or are they still going to try and play nice with, Lewis? Lewis will bring a very, very structured and, methodical, work ethic. He's going to do what he needs to do to win races or try and win races. He's going to hammer it out. But it's going to be kind of interesting to see what progresses throughout the year. Because as anyone that watches Formula One, say, hey, you got your number one drivers, you got your number two drivers. And even though Mercedes wouldn't admit it, obviously Lewis was always the number one. George Russell is a very, very fast driver. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens for this season, for this upcoming season in regards to what Mercedes does and how they get behind Lewis, knowing the fact that at the end of the season he's going over to one of their, you got your top three. It's Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull. There's your contenders. So obviously they don't want to divulge. They're not going to give away. They just don't want to give stuff away. And I've seen that, there's always, and what was very strange, normally you wouldn't see this announcement or done till mid-season, till around June, July is when you start really, everyone signs new contracts or whatnot. But this was done even before this season started, which I found was absolutely astonishing that they did this so early. So, and because having the whole season to go, I mean, Lewis has got to probably think in his mind that this season is just a throwaway. I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting unless the Mercedes comes out of the box, it's just faster as all get out, and which then will be interesting because then obviously him and George will be going at it. But so I don't know. I'm always excited for when the season starts your first about 6 to 8 races really can dictate how the season will look. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think now that these teams have got a few seasons under their belt, and with this new design, everything like that, and how the downforce works now, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But Lewis's aspect of it is even more interesting because what do you do? Obviously, say you're on track, you're racing against the guys in the Ferrari in red. You got to give them some leeway. How hard are you going to race them? What are you going to do? It's in your mind. Think, I gotta go. I'm going to work with these guys in this team next year. I don't want to punt this guy off the track. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out this season with Lewis and the Ferrari guys because they're always seem to be battling it out. Obviously, divulging secrets like that. So what's he going to take over? But kind of going back to one point I was trying to get to is, if you read all the stuff online, and everyone, you got all your pundits out there. They're always going to say this, say that, whatnot. But saying, that there's these stipulations put in place about poaching, anti-poaching, whatnot. Lewis can't take anybody. Understand? Come on, money talks. People can buy out. And I always love how F1 works. And they say, they put that person on gardening leave. They're still getting paid. They're just out there doing nothing, which. Who wouldn't love that? Hey, I'm still making what I made, but I'm doing some gardening, as they would say. But so it'll be curious to see if Ferrari's able to poach any of the Mercedes engineers, any other team members over there, and bring them over, and try and obviously move Ferrari forward because Ferrari hasn't won the world championship since 2007, and that was with Kimi Räikkönen, and then they won the last constructor was 2008 when they last won the constructors. So it's been a long time, and the people in Maranello, fire's under their ass. So we got Fred Vasseur, running the team. So some thought, he might come in and really shake it up or whatnot. So I don't know. Obviously last year was his first year, so now he knows the ropes. He knows how to operate. But the unfortunate thing is with Ferrari, it's very political. How everything is run. They're the only construction that builds their own car and their own engine. So, it's a lot of politicking, a lot of BS that goes on in Ferrari, which I wish they would just kind of get rid of that crap. I don't know if it's just the Italian way. It's the way Italians always do stuff. I don't know. But I think it really could hinder their progress. I think that's why when, Michael came in, Ross Brawn, Jean Todt, you had a German, an Englishman, and a Frenchman come in, and no Italian connections, whatnot. And I think they were really able to turn things around. Just organizationally wise, just how things done. Hey, the top down structure, so no favorites, anything like that. Obviously, starting out it was Eddie Irvine, which I was always a big fan of Eddie Irvine. But then obviously Rubens came in, playing second fiddle. But Rubens got to win some races and whatnot. Then obviously you had your other transitions, but anyways, it's this season's going to be interesting because I think Ferrari's got a lot to prove this year. I think they need to make a big jump. Obviously, thank God. Well, they're the only other team to win a race last year besides Red Bull. So, am I right with that? I'm pretty sure, right? I can't remember. My memory's terrible. So it'll be interesting to see how they step their game up. And like I said, obviously the first 6 to 8 races really dictate and will tell you and show you how the season's going to go, and what these people were able to produce car-wise. The scuttlebutt is AlphaTauri, i.e. now RB Visa Cash App team. God, these names are horrible. I suppose they're making a big jump because they're actually sharing more of their componentry and whatnot, technological yada yada with Red Bull, the parent, the grown-up team, so to speak. Now, there's a fine line in regards to rules and regulations regarding what you can share and what you're not allowed to share, all that kind of stuff, because I obviously look at Haas and how Haas works with Ferrari. So, Haas's, model, they basically buy as much as they're allowed to off the shelf. Chassis from Dallara, motors from Ferrari. They buy a lot of stuff from Ferrari parts-wise. Obviously, they produce their own. So, but, I wish they would just, Andretti would go in there and Haas would sell it to them, or at least, buy out 50% or 75%. And I said, but that's a whole different episode. But anyways, back to Lewis going to Ferrari. So when Lewis gets over to Ferrari, he's going to be, in his 40s. and he's obviously on a multi-year contract, so it's not like a one. All right, we got an option and whatnot. And I think that was saying, but the amount of money they are paying this guy is obscene, just absolutely obscene. So I don't know if that's what made him move or what. But I mean, obviously, you talk to all these drivers and say, hey, it's always like the goal is or what the dream is, always to drive Ferrari. I want to drive for Maranello, and it's an experience like none other. I mean, could imagine the access to the cars you can get access to and the driving and everything you do on the extracurricular sides and just sponsorship, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's just be phenomenal and awesome itself. But was it 400, basically just under $450 million, something like that. I mean, it was just an obscene amount of money that they're throwing at this guy. I want to say that's not all Ferrari paid. I think that's with all the other subsequent stuff like that. But the number I saw that was opposite I've seen for what his duration there was contract is, but with all his other stuff, it's like almost, it's close to $500 million. Now, how much he's getting salary-wise to drive the car, I don't know. I mean, I know like Max is up there in the $40-some million range a year. So, I mean, I'm assuming Lewis is going to be at least that, so if not more. But then you got all the extracurriculars and a lot of back-end stuff. So I don't know. I mean, that's just an obscene amount of money to get paid to drive a car. I mean, God bless him. Have at it, and, you're set for life after that, and you're still a young man. Well, I mean, he's in his 40s. But, I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's unbelievable. Good for him. Hey, if you can get it, go get it. So, but, again, how much motivation will be there? I'm hope that he gets there, and, it's totally new environment, whatnot. It re-energizes him. He comes out, man, just swinging. He's got the momentum. Obviously, the car's got to be underneath him to be able to do it. But again, so what do? Obviously, when they build a car, they try and build it also to the characteristics of the driver. You got some guys like understeer, some like oversteer. Some guys like to turn in sharp, so I mean, there's all these different things. So there's a way you build the car and setup wise and whatnot. You can kind of shape it to how the driver likes it. So when you're building up a new car and the guy's been there for a few years, i.e. Charles Leclerc, because that's obviously to be their guy, it's going to be kind of built around him. So I was like, so what's the car going to be when he gets there in 2025? Is it going to be, hey, what Charles Leclerc likes and how he likes to drive his car? Or what? Is he going to be able to handle that? I mean, so I think that's going to be the other biggest thing is, okay, he gets in there. All right, is it not going to be till year 2? Year 3 if he stays there, that he gets a car underneath him that he likes. I mean, I don't know. There's all these unknowns that you won't know until 2025, race 1. Obviously testing and whatnot they do, that doesn't tell you shit. They sandbag it through everything. They're not going to show all their cards. So I mean, I always take the preseason testing stuff where they go to Valencia or Barcelona or the heck is in Spain. I always take that with a grain of salt because you're never going to really see anyone's true potential because they're not going to show all their cards, especially the top teams. They're not going to show it because they're just not going to let that fly. The backmarker teams, mid-level teams, yeah, they could probably go out there and haul it. But again, you got a large portion of these guys, between who's in the middle there. Then they got your drop off. You got your Williams and your Haas. You got your backmarkers, and everyone else is in the middle. Then you got Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes at the top. So, again, it's going to be an interesting season this year and how things play out. See what happens with Lewis and Mercedes. But 2025, Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. I'm curious about what everyone's thoughts are. Make some comments, shoot some messages our way. Tell me what you guys think about him going to Ferrari and seeing him in the red. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a big change. I don't know if Charles Leclerc is going to be ready for it because that could be a situation where Lewis is going to overshadow Charles in a thing. I like Charles Leclerc. I just think he's, yes, he can drive a car, but, I just don't think he's got the mental wherewithal to win an F1 championship. I just think he's, doesn't have it. I mean, you watch him race, whatnot, he has too many mental breaks, lapses, crashes, whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see. So let me know your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you think about Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari 2025. Again, thanks, guys. This is the Ferrari Marketplace with William Ross, your host, presented on the Motoring Podcast Network, MPN. Until next time, appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.